agree with the propositions to stop hostilities, but we proceed from the fact that such ceasefire should be such that would lead to a permanent peace and remove the initial, original causes of the crisis.
Почули з Росії дуже передбачувані, дуже маніпулятивні слова Путіна у відповідь на ідею тиші на фронті. Він фактично готує відмову станом на зараз. Путін, звісно, боїться сказати прямо президенту Трампу, що хоче продовжувати цю війну. Хоче вбивати Україну.
Have the conflict on the best ground we have summed up in a sentence that they're making the middle class pay for tax cuts for billionaires. It's much, much better not to be in the middle of a shutdown, which would divert people from the number one issue we have against these bastards, these people, which is not only all these cuts, but they're ruining democracy.
Chuck Schumer, I guess the Senate Democratic leader, your senator, said at this meeting that he is going to vote for cloture. He is going to vote to allow there to be a simple majority vote. You think that's wrong?
I believe that's a tremendous mistake. Yes.
Why?
I think, well, first and foremost, the American people, if anyone has held a town hall or has seen what has been happening in town halls, American people, whether they are Republicans, Independents, Democrats, are up in arms about Elon Musk and the actual gutting of federal agencies across the board. This continuing resolution codifies much of this chaos that Elon Musk is wreaking havoc on the federal government. It codifies many of those changes. It sacrifices and completely eliminates congressional authority in order to review these impulsive Trump tariffs that he's switching on and off. And on top of that, for folks who are concerned about effectiveness in government, this Republican extreme spending bill removes all of the guardrails and all of the accountability measures to ensure that money is being spent in the way that Congress has directed for it to be spent. This turns the federal government into a slush fund for Donald Trump and Elon Musk. It sacrifices congressional authority, and it is deeply partisan. And so to me, it is almost unthinkable why Senate Democrats would vote to hand the few pieces of leverage that we have away for free when we've been sent here to protect Social Security, protect Medicaid, and protect Medicare.
And now, here's John Ritchie and L Todd Wood.
Welcome to Output. We got a packed show for you today, but AOC is a really good actor, I have to say. I mean, she said all that with a pretty straight face. It's pretty fascinating. Again, we have a packed show today. We're going to dig into the Zelenskiy, Putin, Ukraine follies, I call them, from all of Zelenskyy's spitting in Trump's face while his representative Witkoff was in Moscow. We are going to dig into some of the OpenAI drama going on with Elon Musk and Sam Altman. We're going to talk about the budget, and we've got the guy to talk about that budget. I'm going to bring on Roger Stone. Roger, thanks for coming on today. I wanted to have you on because I saw your post on military spending, but wow, the timing is just fantastic because we're, I guess, going to get a budget deal today. But what say you about all this going on? Trying to doge the Pentagon. I mean, you go all the way back to Nixon. I mean, you got a real historical archive there. Tell us what you think's happening.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that over his terms in office, President Richard Nixon cut military defense spending by 40%. Pentagon has an $850 billion budget. An 8% cut is hardly draconian. Is there anyone out there who doesn't believe that there's waste and fraud, and yes, let's just say it, corruption within our military spending? So I think that no department should be sacrosanct. You notice AOC very cleverly, the trick of a bartender demagogue, slips in the cuts to Social Security and Medicare, for which there are no plans whatsoever. She has some answering to do. How did she go being worth nothing to about $18 million? Where did that money come from? No, it wasn't from the sale of books that you wrote because you can't write. She's the manifestation of the establishment. They're apoplectic because Elon Musk and his Doge product have produced undeniable, undisputable, not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars worth of fraud. And the most amazing thing is, much of it is flowing to nonprofit organizations associated with people like AOC. So she's great at talking points. I'd love to see her in a debate. She's never debated any of her opponents in her races for Congress because if her IQ was 1 point lower, you'd have to water her like a plant.
Oh my, Roger. What do you? What is the key? I mean, let me just start over the military spending, right? From Nixon on, from Vietnam on. I mean, it's obvious we've been played on multiple wars. These, it's the same playbook. Scare the American public. We have this enemy. We have to fight them. Let's do a big war. Let's keep our troops in Syria. Trump tried to get them out. And now that chicken is coming home to roost with what we were funding under the Obama administration, the massacring of Christians. I want to get to that in the next segment. But what is the key to cutting the Pentagon? Is it just doging it and finding the corruption, or is it restructuring it? What are your thoughts?
How many times do we need to be able to kill everyone in the world? 15 times enough, or maybe 20 would be better.
Yeah,
I kind of think once does the trick. In other words, to pretend, yes, we do need a lean, efficient, high-tech military, but let's start with the more basics. The number of people signing up, recruitment is in the toilet because of two factors, really. First of all, because of the mandatory vaccinations. Drove a lot of people away from the military, also forced a number of people to retire. And also because, well, we have this tendency to want to march off to endless foreign wars where our inherent national interest is not at all clear. So I have a high regard for Hegseth. I like the idea of finally having a Secretary of Defense who's actually fought in the trenches and been under fire, enemy fire. It's been a long time since we had a Secretary of Defense who was actually in the military.
Yeah.
Our Secretary of Defense were civilians who had never fought in combat for their country. Hegseth, whatever you may think of him, I like him. But
I like him. Yeah.
He's a genuine hero. Robert McNamara never risked his life for the United States, yet he's responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans in Vietnam. So I think that to pretend that the Pentagon should be sacrosanct, that all these cuts should come elsewhere, I think that Musk will be just as effective at finding waste and fraud in military spending as he will in all other departments of government. One final point.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders. You know how Bernie always used to attack billionaires and millionaires? Now watch very carefully. Now he only attacks billionaires. That's because Bernie and his wife skimmed millions of dollars off his two presidential campaigns. They became quite wealthy. They took it in media commissions. Now that's not illegal, but it stinks. Did his donors know that Bernie was pocketing millions of dollars from his own campaign? I rather doubt it. Now Bernie's driving a top-of-the-line Mercedes. He's got 3 vacation homes. So he loves socialism for you, but not for Comrade Bernie.
I went to the Air Force Academy, and I studied Russian, and I had an instructor who was a former Soviet, and he said he was sitting on the corner in Moscow, and a big caravan of black cars came by, and everybody else was standing in line for food, and somebody joked, well, at least someone's enjoying communism. It seems like Bernie Sanders, I know about all the vacation homes, but it's really fascinating.
The worst part is he's just a honking, loudmouth pain in the ass. He's a total fraud. This guy's been on the public payroll his entire life. He's never had a job other than being the mayor of Burlington and a U.S. senator. So why is he so wealthy? He will say it's because of the sale of his books. I checked on the sale of his books. Every one of his books lost money. lost money. So, I mean, really, the guy's just trying to squeeze the last few dollars. He is living high on the system. He's the epitome of the Washington politician, a total fraud. He's not a socialist. He's not a communist. He just wants to line his own pockets.
Speaking of Bernie, we did a lot of research several years ago. It's one of the reasons we got deplatformed and attacked was on our reporting on Ukraine. And they went after Bernie before they went after Trump from Ukraine. I mean, they were running an op against him. I guess the whole Clinton, blob machine didn't want him in office. But let's move to Ukraine. I mean, you've got well, go ahead.
Let's just address this point.
Yeah.
There was a time when Bernie was actually anti-war.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when I actually respected him. I said, well, look, this guy's a socialist, but he really believes what he's saying. When he endorsed Hillary Clinton, when he endorsed Joe Biden, he demonstrated that he believes in nothing. That Bernie Sanders is no longer alive. So if the Ukrainians attacked him, it's because he was at one time in his past anti-war. Today, he's gung-ho for war. He doesn't like civil liberties either. He used to be a strong believer in free speech. He no longer believes in free speech either, other than his free speech. Really, of the 100 senators, I think he's the worst demagogue and the worst con man. Just a total charlatan.
Agreed. What about AOC? Does she have a future? Is she going to keep her seat? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, she'll keep her seat because redistricting in New York is so ridiculous that she has a solidly Democrat district, although it is mostly minority and it is more Spanish than it is Hispanic, than it is African American. But I really hope, I pray that she runs for president. I would love to see her as the Democrat nominee. They don't have much of a bench, as you know. I mean, you have Josh Shapiro is tangled up in the Ellen Greenberg murder-suicide controversy. She allegedly committed suicide by stabbing herself in the back at least 10 times. It turns out that her fiance, who's the chief suspect, a gentleman named Goldberg, he was cleared by District Attorney Josh Shapiro. Goldberg's family happens to be among Shapiro's largest financial supporters. This case stinks, and it's going to dog him if he runs for president. You've got Gavin Newsom. He's got great hair. You got to admit that. And he certainly knows how to use his hands to try to distract you from what he's saying. But his record is abysmal. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, the largest outdoor toilets in the country, a horrific crime problem. They're taxing themselves to death. Their economy is a basket case. And of course, they are the epitome of DEI policies. So in order to save a fish, we turned off the water and let half of Los Angeles burn down. I don't think he's a viable national candidate, but I've got the slogan for him. He'll do for America what he's done for California. Rahm Emanuel now says that he's going.
I saw that. That was interesting.
Yeah, the henchman fixer for Bill Clinton. He could probably actually get nominated. The party of John Kennedy, the party of Harry Truman, the party that actually had moderates, the Democrat Party that believed in capitalism, free enterprise, that was patriotic, that believed we did need a strong national defense. That Democrat Party no longer exists. The moderate Democrat is an oxymoron, never mind conservative Democrat. There is no such thing. The party has been captured by a lunatic fringe of Marxists, and they will produce a nominee that reflects that.
Interesting. What happens to politics going forward? Is the Democratic Party just going to die, or will they go the way of the Whigs, or will someone come in and try to restructure it? I mean, you've got really a Marxist, seditious, bunch of gangsters inside the power structure of the U.S.
Well, obviously, they're hoping that they can use their main handmaidens in the mainstream media to scare enough people to take back the House in the midterm elections. Mm-hmm. Jamie Raskin, the communist congressman from Marxist, is from Maryland. His father was a communist. He's a communist. He says that he wants to investigate the acting U.S. attorney in D.C. Translation: the acting U.S. attorney in D.C. is investigating Comrade Raskin. By the way, I've already seen a draft, not an official one. I've seen an unofficial 98-page draft of a criminal indictment regarding Mr. Raskin. So this was done by one of these outside groups. It was quite compelling. This guy, by the way, went on television, said that he would produce proof that I was involved in illegal acts on January 6th. He's never produced any such thing, but he won't waive his congressional immunity so I can sue him. There is no lower life form known to man than Jamie Raskin. He's now replaced Adam Schiff as the single most odious member of the House.
Roger, I want to get, do you have time for a couple-minute break? And then we'll be right back for one more segment. We'll be right back on Output. Thanks for joining us.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L Todd Wood.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. Roger, thanks for joining us again. I want to switch to Ukraine. You got Witkoff over in Moscow. It seems to have gone well. Putin put out and said, well, we're open to the idea of a ceasefire, but, we have some concerns and nuance, as he called it. There's reports that he said he's optimistic, but you got Zelensky out there saying, I'm going to force Putin to end the war. I mean, that's just irrational. What are your thoughts about this monkey business going on here?
Well, as I'm sure you saw the other day, Donald Trump posted on True Social that he was prepared to impose sanctions, bank sanctions, and tariffs on the Russians if they didn't come to the table.
Mm-hmm.
It's a difficult job. It takes two to tango. Yeah. So first he got Zelensky to agree to a ceasefire. I think that was a major accomplishment. And he finally got him to come to the table. Mm-hmm. Remember, we had no peace talks and no attempt to even have them under Joe Biden. They didn't want a resolution. They
weren't even talking.
Right. And they would. And I think the Ukrainians actually wanted to talk because they're getting war weedy. They're getting the daylights kicked out of them, despite what you may have seen in the U.S. media. But Blinken and Biden would not even allow them to enter discussions. No interest in peace. Just want to extend the war forever. Trump is in this difficult position where he gets one side put together and then the other side falls apart. Then he gets the other side put together and the others back off. Takes two to tango. He does understand the art of the deal. Once he gets everybody to the table, and I think he will, you're going to get a resolution of this war. Biden announced before the war began that he would have been willing to give the Russians the Donbass. People forget that. So I think you're going to get a resolution. And Trump is using diplomacy to get them closer and closer together. He had to get a little harsh with the Russians, so much for the idea that he's in Putin's pocket, which is, of course, absurdity.
Todd, I mean, Bessent did tighten sanctions, banking sanctions yesterday, not new sanctions, but just tightened them. Yeah.
I mean, I had a reporter A very well-known reporter from a great metropolitan newspaper called me the other day and asked me whether I thought it was possible that Trump had become a Russian asset when he visited Moscow in the 80s, and whether Trump's first flirtation with the presidency in 1988 was an idea that was hatched in Moscow. Well, since that was my idea, I said, no, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. This idea of trying to brand Trump as somehow in the pocket of Putin simply because he wants to end this pointless war is absurd. Let's be clear what the war is about. In the Budapest Memorandum and the Minsk Accords, we agreed not to push Ukraine into NATO, period. James Baker said, not one further inch east, yet we have done exactly that. Putin does not want NATO missiles, which are really Western missiles, our missiles, paid for by you and I, on the ground, on his border, pointed at Russia. Why is this different than the Russians putting missiles in Moscow in Havana in 1962? It's not. So that's what the war is really about. Now add the bioweapons labs that Victoria Nuland blurted out in congressional hearings do exist and then tried to backpedal. This is an existential threat to the Russians. Putin has made this very clear over and over again. But the mainstream media here and the Democrats would have you believe this is about the territorial ambitions of Putin. He's going to gobble up Ukraine, then he's going to take all of Poland, then he's going to take all of Germany, and he's probably going to take France. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. He's warned us repeatedly that if NATO insisted in trying to put missiles into Ukraine and tried to push NATO membership for Ukraine, that he would have no choice. That's what this war is really about.
I completely agree. I love your analysis. I want to talk to you, switch to the Middle East. Christianity in Syria. We funded ISIS, or this Al-Qaeda group in Syria under Obama. They were the good terrorists for a while. Then we helped overthrow the Assad regime, which hurt Russia. I think that was one of the agendas during that, what happened over the last few months. And now you've got HTS with Golani in running Syria. He's got a beard, he's got a haircut and a new suit, and he's going to Russia or Brussels for donor conferences, but he just massacred close to 20,000 civilians, many of them Christian. What are your thoughts on that?
I just wrote a long piece on this at my Substack, also at stonezone.com. This was very predictable. Ironically, I saw this the other night. Donald Trump predicted this almost 10 years ago when Tulsi Gabbard, for whom I have a very high regard, visited Assad and expressed her concern about the safety of Christians in Syria. She was mocked. She was said that she was somehow a stooge for the Assad regime. Now, no one is saying Assad was a great guy. No one was saying that he was a paragon of human rights. However, we did not have the mass slaughter of Christians. We're talking about the crucifixion of children as young as 5. So this was predictable. The real shame is on all those European heads of state who are cheering on the new Islamic regime in Syria. This is a horrific world tragedy, but it gets very little coverage. You have to go on social media like X to see these horrific videos. This was kind of very predictable. Final point: Biden and the CIA rushed very quickly to topple Assad because they knew Trump would not topple Assad. They have blood on their hands, the blood of Christians on their hands. This is a horrific situation.
It sure is. What about Turkey? I mean, I think they see, I put an article out this morning, I think they see an opportunity to kind of get back in the EU club. They're flexing their muscles down into Syria against Israel, making a lot of threats. It's Sunni influence, obviously, against the Shia Iran, but I see the Middle East changing. I mean, Syria is going to be balkanized, right?
It appears that way. It's interesting to me that President Trump has appointed Tom Barrack, one of his very closest friends and advisors, to be the ambassador to Turkey. Barrack is very much like Trump. He is a deal maker. He's a master negotiator. I think it's among his very best appointments. The Turks at this point, I would have to say, it's just my opinion, they're frenemies. They're frenemies of the United States.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think about the possible conflict with Israel, or do they not have that willpower to do that? Any consideration there?
I'm not a military expert. I think that the Israelis are obviously extremely well armed, and they will do whatever's necessary in the region to protect themselves. But had we never canceled the sanctions that Trump had in place on Iran, the sanctions were so harsh that not even the Chinese would buy oil from their puppet state, and they didn't have the money to finance terrorist attacks like the one on October 7th. They didn't have the money to continue to develop their nuclear weapons program. Joe Biden has basically given them over $190 billion in frozen cash. What did you think they were going to do with that? Use it for humanitarian purposes?
Totally agree. Roger, thank you for your time. Where can people follow you? Anything else you want to get out, that kind of stuff?
Sure. You can go to stonezone.com. And then every day now at 8 o'clock Eastern, go to WABCradio.com. WABCradio.com. I do an hour live primetime show. It is the most powerful AM radio station in the country. If you live in the New York area, it's 770 on the AM dial. But no matter where you are in the world, you can go to WABCradio.com at 8 o'clock Eastern. Please check it out. It's called The Stone Zone.
Cool. Roger, thanks. We'll have you back. Appreciate it.
Take
care. Bye.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L Todd Wood.
Through the pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. The stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
I'm watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition, and sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
We spent a lot of time working with John B. Wells and basically being able to work with them on this Nucleo Boost product. I use this all the time. One of the things that really helps me with, besides stamina, is after COVID, I contracted this like skin autoimmune thing on my back, and I started using this, and 30 days later, it's gone. That's just my experience. It's simply the building blocks that your body needs at the cellular level, and it has the bioallo to get into the cells, which is really important. Also, it's like, zinc and hydrochloroquine. The zinc is the bullet, hydrochloroquine is the gun that gets it into the cell. So go to cdmnutrition.com, check it out. You can look at the subscription. It's cheaper than the monthly, single buy rate. And I've had a really good experience with it. I'll just tell you straight up that I can highly recommend it. Go to cdm.press, put us in your daily scan. I say that all the time, but we are the global news without the globalist spin. If you go in early in the morning and then all the way throughout the day, it's constantly updated. All of our local papers, military, overseas press flows into cdm.press. If you want to drill down to a specific area in the world, like Eastern Europe, you can go to zarism.com. All the sites are at the top on the menu, CDM sites. You can really help us by hitting the site a few times a day and help us grow the traffic and spread the links, tell your friends. And we really want to be, we are a global wire service, but we want to be much more bigger and impactful and really push the America First agenda. So that's what we're about. We're simply about truth. And that's really important to us. We played a video earlier, first on the cold open. It was Steve Witkoff leaving Moscow. He has left in his private jet. What happened during the meeting? Essentially, the Russians came out the Kremlin yesterday, and Putin said that he was, open to the idea of a ceasefire, but there was some issues. Is Ukraine just going to simply use the time to rearm, regroup, bring in more soldiers, mercenaries, and train them? Or, what is actually going to happen? Is the U.S. going to prevent that? Is it going to make it? Russia needs a neutral country on its border. And that's really what they're driving for. I say that's what they need. That's what the Kremlin is saying they need. And so that is, what they're trying to get out of these negotiations. Whether it'll happen or not is to be seen. I mean, Roger Stone's exactly correct. You need two to tango. He had Zelensky on the ropes. He started the military aid again, and Zelensky goes straight to the cameras and bashes Putin and says he's going to force Putin to end the war. What kind of braggadocious is that? And then you have Putin saying, well, what is this crap? I mean, we need two to tango. So Roger Stone's right. It's kind of a ping pong going back and forth, and that needs to be resolved. And then you had what's going on basically after the meeting, where Putin, and even yesterday or this morning, Mark Rutte, who's the NATO head, said they are optimistic about a ceasefire in Ukraine. So I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than you really know. So stay tuned. We're all over this story. We put out a lot of content every day, and that's going to continue. And on that note, second hour, we've got Chris Gleason. We're going to talk about really some judicial corruption that he's been investigating and attacking in the court system. Chris has been a big contributor to the show, and really his research has brought on the whole Act Blue collapse. So we're looking forward to talking to Chris. We're going to bring him on a little bit. We do have another sponsor. As I mentioned, I flew up to Tucker's studio up in Maine a few years ago and did an hour-long interview on Fox Nation. And this is the result of that. We're going to help Tucker sell his outpouch.com. It's a great product. It's more moist, I've heard. It lasts longer. It's a better experience. But I want to play this quick ad from Tucker.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is Alp World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw that in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the Alp. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. These pack a punch that, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. We think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. Let's throw 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay. There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker, stealing all the ALP again.
So check out ALP. It is at alppouch.com/CDN. If you're a Zen user, stop funding the woke corporations and try out the ALP pouch. And let us know what you think. We'd love the feedback to come back and tell us if it's a great product or not. We think it's good. We've been using it, but we want to get your experience. So let us know. On another note, we talked more about Ukraine over the last week than probably any other show, but I want to continue that because and we have a Stop the Ukraine War tour on cdm.press where we've done speeches all over the country and more scheduled. We have one coming up in Florida. I'll announce that soon once it's finalized. But that is really a big priority for CDM, is to end the war in Ukraine. We were one of the early people talking about it. We got deplatformed for it, but we really want to end it. And one of those ways is spreading really good interviews. We've played a few clips of Tucker Carlson speaking to Colonel Douglas McGregor. I want to continue that and play a few minutes of Colonel McGregor here because I want to get this message out, and it's really important. So I hope you enjoy this.
And discuss this. What's your response to that?
Well, I think there's some positive things in there, but we're missing the boat with the Russians again. We don't understand that if Ukraine is going to be neutral, why are we continuing to supply it with weapons at this stage? It's the Ukrainians that have to stop fighting. The Russians will stop when they see evidence that the Ukrainian force is defeated or quits. That hasn't happened yet, not with these attacks that just occurred over Moscow. So the Russians are asking the question, you're the ones keeping this monster alive. You created the monster is fatally wounded, and you keep putting it on life support. Do you really want an end to this war? I mean, imagine if we were dealing with a similar enemy in Mexico, and we found out that the Russians and the Chinese had provided vast quantities of equipment and assistance to the Mexicans who were trying to fight us and regain control of the Southwest. And we defeated them and driven them back out of the country, and they refused to stop. They continue to fight. We say, well, if you want this war to end, tell them to stop fighting, put down their weapons, and back out. And if they won't do that, then we have to do what? March into Mexico and crush them. I mean, this is the best analogy that I can come up with to make people understand what we're dealing with. So if you want normalized relations with Russia, go back to what we said at the beginning. End the military support for this heinous regime. This is guilty of all sorts of terrible war crimes anyway. All the things that Russia was accused of are things that the Ukrainians have done. So let's get out of this.
Well, they tried to, and they assassinated people. They tried to assassinate a couple people I know personally.
Yes.
Well, fact, not guessing. So, I consider that government, not the Ukrainians. I think the Ukrainians, as you said, are valiant and decent. And an awful lot of them are Christians. I know a lot of Ukrainians, and I couldn't think more highly of them. But I think that their government is totally evil.
Completely.
And so here's the thinking as far as I understand it. What do I know? But my strong sense is that the Trump White House wants an end to this war. The president campaigned on it. He thinks it's within his grasp. He also wants a more normalized relationship with Russia. He grieves over Russia's now permanent alliance with China. He sees how bad that is. It's not fixable. But bringing Russia a little bit closer back to the West is a good thing. I think I'm describing his thinking fairly. But for the purposes of making a deal, the thought is that you can't make a deal from a position of weakness. And so you have to show your teeth in order to get the other side to come to better terms. That's the idea behind throwing more weapons to Ukraine. Well, how do you assess that?
It's delusional. It's leading down the wrong path. If you want this to end, then stop it. You stop supplying it and get our people out of Ukraine. Make it very clear we're out of this. No more weapons, no more cash. We're finished. The British and the French can't come in and make up for that. Neither can the Germans. So that's all nonsense. You saw this Euro summit. They're going to assemble almost $1 trillion to beef up defense in these countries. Good luck. I don't see that occurring in Europe at all, because the average Europeans are saying, for what? They look at what's happening and they no longer believe this myth. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. They're going to be on I-95 in northern Jersey tomorrow night. Come on, the Russians are coming.
We have to kill them here. You hear Republicans say this all the time.
Crap.
Republican senators, really the worst group in the country, in my opinion, short of Antifa. But, it's a really good deal for us because we're killing all these European Christians there, so we don't have to kill them here.
Yeah.
And they say that out loud.
Well, they said that Lyndon Johnson was like, well, if we don't kill them here now in Vietnam, we're going to be fighting them in Los Angeles. So we got to get them now. Come on, that was ridiculous. I heard General Abizaid make the same stupid statement in 2004. Well, we have to kill these Islamist terrorists here in Iraq, or we'll be fighting them in our own country. It's all crap. It's the same old set of lies. It's sort of like the perpetual neocon narrative. It's 1936. We all have to band together. There's another Hitlerite on the horizon. This is a standard sort of gruel that is pitched to the American people over and over and over again in the Anglosphere in general, whether it's Great Britain, United States, or Australia. It's all nonsense. We got to get past this and once and for all bury it. If we really want this to stop, this is not about winning or losing. I think that's another problem. We got to make sure this is a win for the president. A win for the president is an end to this war, period. Number two, what are our interests in Ukraine? Tell me what they are. What are the strategic interests that justify intervention in that country? Time's up. There are none. We've never had any interest in Ukraine whatsoever. We wish them well. We want them to be happy and prosperous, but we have never had any interest in defending them against anybody under any circumstances. We've got to get back to what's rational, not what's emotional. The president just needs to look at this and say, we need to stop this. And he can be a world historical figure if he ends the carnage in Ukraine by simply saying, that's it, we're out. And then turns around to the Middle East and say, stop now. No more mass murder and expulsion of human beings from Gaza or the West Bank or anywhere else. If he's willing to do those things, he's a world historical figure. That's a dramatic sea change in the history, I would say, of the West and probably of the world. But instead, what we get is, we can't do that, we'll look weak. It's sort of the argument that Kissinger made to Nixon. Well, we can't just leave Vietnam. Well, that's exactly what the hell we did, right? We left.
Yeah.
So, no, we got to go into Cambodia to show them that we're strong. How many people did we lose in Cambodia needlessly?
Yeah.
It's the same mentality. Just be honest. This is over. And then tell the Europeans, these are people that we're supposedly allied with, that they need to sit down at the table with Moscow. And we're happy to be there. We'll sponsor it. We'll set them up.
But they've gone so far in the other direction. Like in the UK right now, even Nigel Farage, head of the Reform Party, which I think is the biggest party, doesn't have power, but it's by registration the biggest party in Britain, and it's the counterbalance both to the crazed Labourites and the pathetic castrated Tories. They won't say that we should end the war in Ukraine. Even they won't. I mean, it's like there's no party that I'm aware of in all of Europe with power that will say that.
Well, you said with power. There are plenty of parties out there advocating.
There are.
AfD, the Alternative für Deutschland, is not a far-right party. I hear that all the time. Anything that challenges the status quo is also far-right.
Anything Applebaum doesn't want.
It's a bunch
It's
of nonsense.
News from the Edge.
Yeah, they want to. There's no question.
It's Output with John Ritchie and L Todd Wood.
Through the pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. The stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, a family-owned and operated investment advisory practice. I'm a certified portfolio manager, and my job is to help you make better decisions with your money. One of the things we try to avoid is investing in companies that push the woke agenda. If you're invested with one of the big firms out there, there's a pretty good chance that you're feeding the beast that hates your values. Our company is 100% conservative, and we'd love to have an opportunity to work with you. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big, proud American Eagle logo.
So at the top of the hour, we're going to be breaking some news here on output from our CDM contributor, Chris Gleason. He's made some moves in the legal sphere, and we're going to get all that information direct to you. Before we get there, I want to talk, we pride ourselves on following stories and staying up with stories like Ukraine, like we did with the vaccines, like election integrity, like election fraud in Florida and elsewhere with the Miami Independent, which Chris writes for often. But one of the stories also we've been all over is AI. We've had Brendan Riley on many times talking about where the future is with AI, what the dangers are, what the opportunity is. But we found a story fascinating that we started to cover this morning. Sam Altman has been, in the White House donating money, trying to get close to Trump. But you've also got Elon Musk in the White House, who's extremely close to Trump and has immense power with the Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, and is wreaking havoc, streamlining, right-sizing the federal government in Washington, D.C. And by the way, the real estate market is tanking in D.C., which I find fascinating. But Altman, yesterday it was reported on CNBC that he wants a light regulatory touch from the White House on artificial intelligence. Think about what he's saying. This is the guy that was fired by the board at OpenAI, which was co-founded with Elon Musk. Elon Musk is now suing him. We'll get to that in a second. But this is the guy who was fired because of the board didn't like what he was doing, like enabling AI to be a danger to humanity. We still don't know everything that happened with the board behind the scenes. And he eventually was brought back in some kind of deal as power struggle inside the company. But essentially, the technology is very dangerous. And the thought was that he was not putting any guardrails, to use a word from the left, on what open or artificial intelligence was being enabled to do and would be capable to do in the future as it got smarter and smarter and more powerful. So Altman wants a light regulatory touch. I found this fascinating, and he submitted its proposal to the U.S. government through OpenAI, emphasizing the need for speed in AI advancement and a light hand from regulators, while highlighting its take on the dangers of AI technology coming out of China. So you see what he did there? He's like, you got to let me do whatever I want with AI because China's coming. And if we don't, it's the same old deep state threat response plan that they've done over and over and over very effectively. And then if they don't get what they want, they do some kind of false flag attack, Gulf of Tonkin kind of thing to scare everybody into doing what they want. The proposal underscored OpenAI's direct effort to influence the government's coming AI action plan. And it's in a precarious position with the Trump White House because it's fighting Musk. And by the way, Musk sued Altman for his alleged nefarious behavior, trying to turn OpenAI into a profit company where he owns a lot of it and makes billions. from its nonprofit status. And he said OpenAI expressed its distaste for the current level of regulation in AI, calling for the freedom to innovate in the national interest. You see that? It's always about the national interest. In a voluntary partnership between the federal government and the private sector, rather than overly burdensome state laws. I found this fascinating. We're going to continue to stay on that. We'll probably have Brendan Riley on soon again to talk about this, because obviously AI is not going away, and it's really important to the country and to the world to make sure it's done right. As Elon said, I listened to the interview, I think it was Rogan or Tucker he did, and he said, essentially it's like a baby. We have to train it to grow up right. As our friend Chris Gleason says, the judges are only as good as, Michael Doherty says, the judges are only as good as their mama raised them. And so we need to make sure that happens with OpenAI or with AI, artificial intelligence as well, that it will be only as good as we raise it. So fascinating story. We're going to stay all on that really intensely over the next few weeks to months. We're going to take another break, and then we come back. We got Chris Gleason.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L Todd Wood.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you.
My friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this, but that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mix it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
So in the cold open, we played a couple clips on the budget. This is a big deal that we wanted to talk about also. Trump is pushing this CR. He got it through the House. You know, a lot of debate in conservative circles. Tom Massey, Representative Massey, didn't vote for it. It was the only Republican that didn't vote for it. And it did get through the House, however, and now it's in the Senate. And there was a big drama on X and on the news between AOC, Schumer, and all the Democrats. And you know, we're going to shut the government down. The same old fear and response kind of tactic that they do. And guess what? Schumer yesterday said he's going to vote for it and let it leave cloture, get it through cloture so it could go to the floor for a vote. So this is huge. We played the cold open with AOC's response to that. Obviously, she didn't like that too much, but it looks like Trump's going to get the budget he wants. I think it's through September. So fascinating stuff going on. We're going to stay on this story as well. And again, CDM.press is updated all the way through the day. And if you don't, just want global news, but you want more specific, look at all of our local papers. Go to CDM sites at the top of CDM.press. And you'll see all of the different sites that we offer news on, from the Balkans to the Middle East to Israel to local jurisdictions in the U.S. We are the global newswire without the globalist spin. So please put us in your daily scan. Sign up for our new newsletter. Sign up for our no ad subscription. I mean, you get access to all of our content, which is massive, without any advertisements popping up on your phone. People, and you have to scroll through on your phone. People really dig that. We get a lot of good feedback. So please help us out there. Tell your friends about CDM. I'm going to bring in Chris now, my friend, my fellow warrior, fellow traveler. How you doing?
Busy, but good. Busy, but good.
Yeah, I know you're really busy, and I appreciate you coming on today. Short notice as usual. Like when something happens on election integrity or election fraud, I'm like, where's Chris? Send up the bat signal. Get Chris Gleason on. So you dropped some stuff last night. You want to go into that first?
Sure. So we've been doing stuff here in Florida. I ran the advisor of elections in Pinellas County, which I believe at this point is arguably one of the dirtiest counties, most corrupt counties in the United States. Probably ranks up there with Chicago and Maricopa and Fulton. It's that. So I ran for supervisor of elections here. We had a whole slate of candidates that ran all across Florida. We all got shellacked, allegedly, across Florida. Amazing how people who really wanted election integrity and wanted fixed elections, how they would have all voted in the incumbents that gave them what they had before, right? And as you saw firsthand in the courthouse, I was debating against a whole team of county paid for attorneys and against the judge who was working in concert with the attorneys. So they made a lot of questionable rulings. 3 of the judges that made on my case, and so I appealed to the DC. Yesterday, some bombs. Last week we dropped some bombs. I think yesterday though was really big because what we did is we essentially motioned for judicial notice, explaining to the court, hey, we have these irrefutable facts. These irrefutable facts that 219,000 vote by mail ballots were illegally requested on June 23rd, a Sunday. And when the vast majority of the votes totaled for the election were vote by mail ballots, that's
so Chris, that's a huge issue. Let me say, you've been on this for what, a year now or 8 months, and it's obviously huge corruption. It's obvious what's going on in Florida because it happened in Miami-Dade and maybe another 2 counties or so where they just faked the ballot. They created ballots like they print money and then cast them. and won elections. And it's so obvious. You have all the data. We've been in court. You got dismissed by a corrupt judge, but Pam Bondi was the
and sealed.
AG. Yeah, and sealed so nobody could see it. I mean, Pam Bondi was the AG in Florida. She's now the Attorney General of the White House. It's crickets. I mean, it's just amazing that this is not getting more attention. Everybody's talking, we got to save 2026. Well, they just created 200,000 ballots on a Sunday and used them to steal the election, and you won't do anything about it. I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, that was part of what ended up getting filed yesterday. So what we did is we noticed the court on the law. We noticed the court on the fact that the data that I presented to the court previously that was erroneously and illegally sealed was official government data. And so essentially, actually all of my work is based on and uses data directly from the United States government, from the state of Florida, from the counties. So my data isn't really my data. It's our data, and it's the government's data. And that is how we got them. So here in Pinellas County, what we did is not only did I file this motion for judicial notice, the irrefutable facts and evidence, but I also filed what's called a petition for a writ of mandamus. And a writ of mandamus is when you are trying to compel the court to make somebody do what they are legally required to do. And in this case, my petition for the writ of mandamus was directly to the second DCA here in Florida. And essentially what we said was, hey, look at, we have a bunch of irrefutable evidence and irrefutable facts, irrefutable fraud, irrefutable official misconduct. And you as the court have because this is so compelling and so beyond reproach because it's government's own data, you must refer this to both the county grand jury that is currently impaneled and to the U.S. attorney for a grand jury investigation at the federal level. Because for every one of these 219,673 ballots that were illegally requested on June 23rd, you have a corresponding federal charge. So for each of those 219,673, you also have a separate wire fraud charge. And because the wire went to a data center for AWS, that's across state lines, now it's federal. Then because they illegally and fraudulently requested these vote by mail ballots, and it were all sent out via the United States Postal Service, now you have another corresponding 219,673 individual accounts of mail fraud. And then they conspired to conceal this. They conspired to deprive myself and other candidates and other voters, of our constitutional rights under the color of law. And currently we have the Florida election fraud mafia who knows that they're caught, just like we caught them after 2022, and they passed the Florida Election Fraud Legalization Act.
They're about to pass they're about to pass part 2 of that.
They're about to pass part 2. It's called the Treasonous Overthrow of Florida Act, SB 1414. So it's the Subversive Activities of Florida Act. That's what it is. Because what they are doing is they are subverting the constitutional form of government of Florida via unlawful means, which is election fraud. And this is going on because Ron DeSantis, he wants to keep his people in power. He wants to install his wife to ensure that all of his crimes go uncovered. And so DeSantis Inc. needs to go away. And Cord Bird,
it's kind of like Zelenskiy. They just need to go away.
Yeah. I mean, they just need to go away. And, they really should just all be retired. And, oh, by the way, I requested that they be investigated for subversive activities in the mandamus, citing the overthrow of the constitutional form of government via unlawful means. Now, prior to the unlawful means, you have violent this and terrorism that, but at the end of the day, it says and other unlawful means. And I think that any reasonably prudent person with a degree of actual honesty will say, yeah, election fraud and widespread rigging elections, that's constitutional overthrow of government.
Yeah.
Right?
They scream about they scream about the Confederacy and how they were, traitors and all this stuff. They're doing the damn same thing with just not calling it, the Confederate States of America, right?
I mean, what they're doing is unconscionable. It is a total breach of public trust. I mean, Core Bird, total breach of public trust. And we've called them out on it. We've documented this. Now, will Pam Bondi do something about it? I don't know. I personally, I'm not thrilled that I live on the coast of the Gulf of nobody's been arrested, and there is, we need to see some arrests. And I mean, it's not like we don't have the evidence. I mean, irrefutable evidence of it. So, we have to use the court system. Unfortunately, we've run into some snags with compromised judges. Now, I think we're on the right track with my case, because what we've done is we've, in my latest filing, I showed how approximately 25 of the Pinellas County Circuit Court judges, they are now either a material witness to the election fraud, a victim of the election fraud, or a participant in the election fraud. And all I want is,
does that mean you can is a vehicle to kick it higher? Is that what that does for you? You think?
I believe so. I'm not an attorney. I just build some whiz bang legal AI to do this stuff. What we have found is that there are quite a few of the DCA judges also that are soon to be named as witnesses to my case. And even further up the food chain here in the Florida court system, if you understand what I'm saying. So we're investigating to see if what I think is true regarding the Florida Supreme Court. And, so we have a constitutional crisis going on here in Florida. Thankfully, Donald Trump's too big to rig win helped ensure that he is behind the levers of power in DC. And I mean, he promised the American people that if these people cheat, they're going to get caught. And he was right, because me and my team have been working on this, and we caught him, and it's irrefutable. So now we are going to have to move into the criminal investigation by law enforcement and grand juries to restore our republic.
So that's a good question, as in, what do we do about election fraud overall? I mean, Trump has talked about going after it, but is it just we have to stay on through the court system in the grassroots, or I don't see nobody's been arrested,
Yeah. So local action yields national results. Okay. Mm-hmm. And, the reason why I got really active here locally was I saw that there was a lot of bad things on the horizon, and we needed to be in control of our homes. That was really, really, really important for us. Okay. Really important. And as I've been digging here in Pinellas County, Florida, it's really bad. And so we have to take control locally, because if there's natural disasters, if there is a national emergency, I mean, we saw that with COVID, right? And, so we at the grassroots level, people have to get off the pickleball court. They got to get off the golf course. And because we the people, some more so than others, have been asleep at the wheel for quite a while, and they've been not engaged. And they have to be engaged, because if you're not engaged, what happens is a highly organized criminal racketeering enterprise will seize the levers of power, like they have here in Pinellas County, Florida, like they have Florida in general, and like they have nationwide that we're seeing, right, with the smurfing. And because the smurfing isn't just Act Blue. The smurfing is a uniparty bipartisan effort. And, what people are seeing right now with Act Blue, this is stuff that we uncovered, years ago, that we've been fighting. I mean, you've reported on it extensively, and it's at every level of government. I mean, we first discovered it, at the Fed level. Then here in Florida was the first state that discovered that it was going on at the state level. And then with Fannie Willis, Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, we uncovered that it was going on, and proved that it's going on at the DA level. And, all of this stems via the terrorism financing networks, funded by guys like Pierre Omidyar, Reid Hoffman, George Soros, the World Economic Forum, the money that's been laundered through the Ukraine, money from the Chinese Communist Party, money from God knows where else. And, what we really need is, America needs to come to Jesus with campaign finance and elections, because we don't have elections. We have selections, and it's incumbent upon us, as we the people, to hold them accountable. And if that means that we have to hold the president accountable for the promises that he made, then we're going to have to hold him accountable too, right?
Well, that's what free media does. So I originally wanted you on today for the Act Blue stuff that's like collapsing as we speak, and then you brought out all this judicial filings last night. But the leadership of Act Blue is resigning en masse, and you have some congressional, combers talking about it. We found 200 violations, or, the banks have shown hundreds of the flags reports for money laundering. That's just a little prick of the iceberg, right? I mean, it's so deep.
I mean,
yeah,
it's so much worse. I mean, it's pretty crazy, actually. So Act Blue, they were the ones that initiated this money laundering RICO enterprise. But what ended up happening is one of the Act Blue split off, created this democracy engine, and they have been ramping up their efforts. Democracy engine is the unipay tool for financing money laundering. You have WinRed, which the Republicans came late to the game, but it's the same underlying software and source code and methodologies. Then you have this other one that nobody knows about, starting to hear a little thing about it, right? I uncovered the connection with this thing called the Action Network. And when I was doing a lot of stuff with the Justice Society and this, and what I saw there was really troubling. It's a platform created by labor unions to facilitate election fraud on a scale that has never been done before. And so Move On in December of last year saw the writing on the wall And they moved on from ActBlue and moved on to the Action Network. And so the Action Network, this is all tied into all the major banks. So, you have, the suspicious activity report. But what about the Patriot Act alerts? What about the Bank Secrecy Act notifications? What about the credit fraud alert? What about KYC? What about AML? I mean, I worked in banking for years, and there is so much regulation, so many things. Every single fraud detection system had to have been disabled or completely ignored. And so this goes right to Bank of America. This goes to Wells Fargo. This goes to Chase. This goes to Amalgamated Bank, aka the Bank of Evil. Goes to Citizens Bank. It goes to Visa. It goes to MasterCard. It goes to American Express. Because, at the end of the day, in order for the largest money laundering enterprise in the world's history to go on, you have to have attorneys, accountants, and bankers that are complicit in the activities. And so who are the bankers? Well, we know who they are. Who are the attorneys? Well, we got Perkins Coie, we've got Mark Elias's firm, and there's a host of others. So, this isn't we got ActBlue and it's over. No. This is the.
So what do you think this? You think this is a controlled burn? Like they are. Okay, we got ActBlue. We're busted. So we got to take them down. So we're going to let the leadership resign, and we'll have Comer put out a little press, and it'll die down in the press, and we'll move it all over to this. What did you call it? Democracy Engine, or what was the other one?
Democracy Engine, and you have the Action Network, and the Action Network is currently being used by the Hoffman and Soros orgs to commit terrorism against Elon Musk's companies. And I mean, I'm not, for a long time, I was on the fence about Elon. And at one point I even kind of trended towards liking him a bit. Then he started shadow banning me because I was critical of DeSantis. At the end of the day though, Elon's for Elon. The PayPal mafia is real. They have their interests at stake. I think the questions that people really need to be asking, right, is David Sachs, is he really the guy for this? Because is David Sachs going to take action against OpenAI as the AI czar, as the tech censorship czar? I mean, big censorship is a direct result of companies like Facebook, which Reid Hoffman, Peter Thiel, and Sachs were seed investors in. Palantir. I mean, you mean to tell me that Palantir doesn't have a suite of money laundering tools that they use to track terrorism, right? Mm-hmm. So we got to hold all of them accountable. And so, I do think it's a controlled narrative at this point. I mean, why else are they talking about how Chris Gleason and his team did this? Why is James O'Keefe getting all of the notoriety for this? Why isn't CD Media getting reach that is unfettered? Because at the end of the day, when they suppress your reach, I mean, that's tech censorship. I mean, why? There's a big push, right, with RFK for organic foods, right? Well, what about organic social media reach? I mean, I think that's the biggest health threat. I think COVID taught us, right, was that the propaganda engine and controlled narrative stuff, why? I mean, it's not like all of this stuff wasn't known before. I mean, Gateway Pundit broke it. You broke it. I mean, you've been on it like a hobo on a ham sandwich. I mean, we've been reporting the extent, the extensiveness of all of this stuff. Yeah. And so,
last question, Chris. it's interesting to me, and hopefully one day I will know before I die, or maybe after I die, I'll know, how did Trump actually win this election? It seems like there was like this huge effort, and yeah, maybe it was just too big to rig, but there was obviously some planning going on in the behind the scenes. What are your thoughts on that, real quick?
What are my thoughts on that? Well, I know that all things are possible with God. Yeah. And, my thing is this. I know that Trump won in 2020. That's what the data says. And I believe, and I know with the data that I've looked at thus far for 24, Trump won in a massive landslide, a blowout unlike anything ever seen before in the history of this nation, really. And so, but the Uniparty needed to maintain their control, right? So what they did is they stole the down ballot races, and crooked cord Bird and Ron DeSantis made it look like it was tight, like it was close. It wasn't. There's no way it was. I mean, unbelievably no. And so, I said that to Roger. I said, Roger, we got to expose this because, I love him, but he's got to know. He's got to know. We got to use, Roger, make the case. Say, hey, if we blow this stuff out, it's going to be very, very, very clear how bigly Trump won nationwide. So that's how. Did Trump win? Absolutely. He won in 2020 and won bigly in 2024. Now, all planning went on to ensure that. A lot of people work really hard. And a lot of people work really hard behind the scenes. Yourself, myself, a whole host of grassroots patriots all over the place. And, we're mad.
Yeah.
We're mad on our country back. If we want arrests, Pam Bundy, Kash Patel. If you're hearing this, you hear me. You need to do something. And Harmeet Dillon, you're going to be in charge of the Civil Rights Division. You're on notice too, Harmeet. And I'm going to hold all of you accountable.
Chris, thank you very much. We're out of time. I really appreciate you coming on short notice. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
It's News from the Edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L Todd Wood.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. So welcome back. Thank you for joining us today on Output. The judicial corruption and election integrity and election fraud is one of the big issues we're really focused on here at CDM, and we're going to continue to do that. And by the way, we're having a lot of people give us a ring on Advisor Metals. So I wanted to just highlight that. If you go to Advisor Metals or cdmmetals.com,
That's cdmmetals.com for our audio audience. You can get your free investing guide in precious metals there from Advisor Metals. You can fill out the form. A lot of people have been filling it out, and we're sending those inquiries over to Advisor Metals, and they'll contact you. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate the interest and the effort. You really need to take care of your portfolio, because if you've got your life's work stuck in an IRA that is all in equities or whatever, you could be in for some really rough rides as this economy transitions. Several years from now, you may be in really good shape, but a lot of people don't have several years. So make sure you're protected with a portion of your portfolio if it works for you, and you can talk to Advisor Metals about that. In precious metals, a long-term store value, they're hitting all-time highs, and that's just getting started in our opinion. So cdmmetals.com. But election integrity, judicial corruption, we were in the courtroom. I saw what happened to Chris Gleason when they dismissed his case, and just a sham, complete sham. Then she sealed all the evidence so nobody can see the evidence in perpetuity, not for 75 years like the RFK assassination, but forever. So not really cool. So that's just something we're going to stay on, and we're going to keep pounding the table and shouting from the rooftops as to what's going on so we can save our country for our children. On that note, I did an interview the other day with Michael Dougherty, who was one of the original deep state attackees. They stole his company. They blackmailed him for extorted him for $1 million, saying his patient information was on the dark web. It was a lie. The FBI had given hacking software to another company to take his data, put it on the dark web, and then accuse him of doing it and say, oh, we can fix it for $1 million. So this was an extortion racket going on all over the country. And Mike was one of the early guys that got busted on this, not busted, but got attacked by the deep state in a money, shakedown scam. He eventually won in court, but I want to replay this interview because it's really good. And people need to understand what's happening with our judiciary, and we need to focus on fixing it. So here's Mike Dougherty, author of The Devil Inside the Beltway. So we are lucky and honored to have with us Michael Dougherty. He is the author of The Devil Inside the Beltway. He was one of the original guys attacked by the deep state over a decade ago, fought and won some, lost some in court, but Mike, with the Perkins Coie issue that came up yesterday, I thought of you, man. I got to call this guy. So what are your thoughts?
God, I hate their guts. Anyway, they get away with it. They get away with it. I was so excited. I love Emerald. I was like, great. It's sad that it's so exciting to have a scintilla of accountability. Because as you know, and your audience might not know, after the 2020 election, I filed a lawsuit not about Trump, but about the Georgia senator election and the senators, and the complete, and I got to sit on the 50-yard line, as naive as I am not, and watch this orchestrated show that is being really done in open court in front of the public, but because the public is lied to by a media that tells half truths, and politicians on both sides of the aisle, this is you, Georgia GOP, that is just covering things up and whistling past the graveyard. It's a lot to take in. In that specific case, Perkins Coie comes in defending. Once they get whiff of the lawsuit, I also took it as flattery that our lawsuit had teeth, because here come the big guns. Because
I was in the courtroom, so I saw all this happen.
They just, the case basically was that they violated all these election rules, and we have to stop and be able to examine these things. And what I learned the hard way, and this is that with election law, I believe in the United States, there's not a judge on the planet that wants election law in their courtroom.
Yeah.
And the excuse they use is there's fraud all the time, but you have to prove that the fraud impacted the election. Well, how are you supposed to do that without the levers and powers of litigation through discovery? And what I witnessed was conservative Republican appoint judge it's almost like he had a spring in his chair. He dismissed the case after the hearing so fast.
Yeah.
He disappeared. I mean, he literally made his ruling and was gone.
It was like a Jack in the Box when you turn the handle and it moved.
I know, it was like a TV show. It's like, where'd he go? I mean, case dismissed. Choom. And then, you know, by this time, then you get into your own lawyers intimidated, and it's a whole behind the scenes secondary racket of what goes on. And we have so many assumptions and trusts that are violated in every corner of the political system in this country. In the judiciary, it's that, well, we don't want election law, so we're going to dismiss this because we're going to say, yeah, there might have been fraud, but it didn't impact the election. But we're not going to give you a platform to have discovery. And then the media will gaslight that all these election law cases were all tossed out and they all lost, which is a classic media half-truth because, yeah, they all lost. Because the judges never allowed discovery. So guess what? You can't prove your case if we don't let you look. So and so this is, you know, and I understand in principle why they don't want to have elections in their courtrooms, because if you think conservatives go rabid, they're nothing compared to Democrats. Look at the speech a few days ago. And so if when they lose in court, they would lose elections, they would flood the court system if they could. I do understand that point of view. There has to be a different solution. So Perkins Coie is the pit bull of this. And I have to say that that lawyer came in because they have money, and money.
Mm-hmm.
And the person has the most organization and the most knowledge in court wins. And that lawyer came in not flashy, not theatrical. She came in just almost boringly organized.
Yeah.
And then she floats this excuse, which is what I call the famous judicial toilet flush, which is called latches, where they can just have a discretionary opinion that the accused party didn't have. We waited too long because filing in January from a November election is too long. Mm-hmm. And then you're saddled with a lawyer who's intimidated, an American Bar Association that's now let other lawyers file grievances against lawyers when they're not involved in the case. They suddenly have standing. You have an intimidation racket set up in place so that any lawyer that's going to represent you is almost like got to set his career on fire. And so that works because then you can't get anyone to defend you, or it's going to break you financially, and you're dead before you even get to the stage. And that's the game. And Perkins Coie pulls that crap. So, for example, when the Arizona world went nuts in 2020 and talked about what they had seen, on the ground election workers, Perkins Coie did what you could say is aggressive but not illegal tactics of sending litigation hold letters to people that don't know what a litigation hold letter is, don't have the money to know, and just, again, it's scorched earth, scare the world, because they've got so much money to intimidate everyone and to attack Americans that are hardworking, middle-class people that don't have the interest, time, and luckily the life experience to take that on. And it works. So to hold those SOBs accountable by taking away so when I heard they even had a security clearance, I'm like, this is terrifying. Covington, the land of Eric Holder and Perkins Coie, are you kidding me? I mean, why don't we just set the Clintons and the Obamas up in the Oval Office or give them a 24-hour, remote video? It's insane. So that's my short summary of what
I wonder if that will have an impact or not. I mean, obviously, they may have a clearance, but they are not read into certain programs or whatever. You have to have different access. But
now,
will that impact them, do you think, at all? I mean, it'll.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it is a little perfunctory. I don't know. Maybe not now. But my whole thing is, we have got to learn how much access enemies of American ideals have when Americans elect enemies of American ideals.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah.
And so it's a metastatic cancer, and to give security clearances and let them in. This is the big, big lesson of what happens if you're a passive citizen, don't vote. No one's saying you have to have a full-time career as a political activist. All you have to do is vote, not be bamboozled, and understand what's going on right now. Now, clearly, it's been a great thing. The last decade has woken a lot of people up. There's still
you've been like blowing the horn now for almost 20 years. And you would always be so upset about what happens in the courtroom. And people don't know what's going on. They think they have a courtroom where they can get justice, and that's just not it. So
I have seen the most appalling behavior. And I have to say, I've also seen phenomenal judges. And I've discussed this with federal appellate court judges in social situations. And one of them said to me, look, the founding fathers, you could say, probably made a mistake, right? In the creating the judicial branch, they did create a branch that has some degree of absolute power. And the lifetime, look at Amy Coney Barrett right now. Everyone's going nuts over her and what she's doing. Yeah. I mean, you appoint these people, you vet them, and then they get the lifetime appointments, and then the real person comes out. I'm like, what on earth? What planet did you come from? And that's a mistake. What he said that I laughed out loud, and he also laughed too, was like, well, the founding fathers thought that the judges would police each other. And I was like, all right. Yeah, like doctors police each other, media polices each other, lawyers police each other. Sure. And so, and yet I've had highly effective, high ethics, really serious, brilliant judges. They absolutely exist. And it's not because they ruled for me, believe me. I've got more losses than wins. But I call it the long slog of Justice Mountain. And one of the dirty things I've learned is your judge is only good as their mother raised them. Mm-hmm. They can get away. I have seen shocking behavior, and I had one judge in Pittsburgh, and I was screaming about how awful she was, really. And my lawyers were like, basically, my lawyers finally just said, "Look, shut up. Don't say it publicly. It just makes you look like you're having a bad attitude about your case." Mm-hmm. And 2 months later, she gets arrested for drunk driving, so drunk they can't read her Miranda rights, and then in the press, the chief judge says, "Oh, she's only reading civil cases, not criminal, so it's fine." She stays on the bench. She later gets promoted. It's beyond comprehension. Once again, the behavior is so shocking that when you, as the person that's experienced the behavior, tell someone else, they think you must be embellishing.
Yeah.
They think you must be, which is the one thing I love about the court is I have the transcripts. So, and dealing with the government, I had transcripts and letters. So that's why I thought when I wrote my book, oh my gosh, there were things in my book I didn't write because I know them now, didn't know them at all. So it's insane that people think you're nuts, but I have transcripts. So thank God I had transcripts, because then I'm like, when I speak publicly, I don't really have what I say up there. I have what the court said, because people will still believe, transcripts, because then I'm out of it.
Right.
Like, you read it, you decide. Isn't this appalling? And so anyway,
where are do you have any ongoing lawsuits now that you want?
Are you kidding me? Yes, I have. I have a law. The Third Circuit overturned a dismissal of one of my cases in Pittsburgh. It's been going on for 10 years, where I sued for defamation. I have a case up in Georgia waiting for arbitration. It is, but you have to. The system's really infected, and the system is sick. Not only the process, it's hard because it's hard to explain to someone that hasn't gone through it before. And I was never in a courtroom myself until I was 47, and now I'm a veteran. And I'm like, and if you're a lawyer, you can't talk about this.
Yeah.
You want to have a legal career.
Yeah.
forget it. It's kind of like real estate agents. Their mortgage brokers and their bankers and their inspectors are with them all the time. The client's with them once, right?
Right.
Same thing with the judges, like the lawyers in front of the judge, in front of the judge, in front of the judge. It's a small town in front of the judge. The client comes and goes. So there's a whole silent thing going on between lawyers on opposing sides and judges, and let's all get along, and I'm my courtroom this way. And the plaintiff and the defendant are like ancillary.
Yeah.
And then they all pat themselves on the back. It's the biggest hot air self-congratulatory orgy I think you could ever see of these people.
Let me ask you this: we joined RFK's case at his request against the Trusted News Initiative. It was originally filed in Louisiana. It's against Washington Post and BBC.
Right.
And so they got it moved to New York, and then moved it to DC. And it's been there for a year and a half, and the judge won't even respond to the motions.
All right. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. So there's all these. I feel like I want to write a book about the tricks of the courtroom that lawyers can never tell you. Judges have discretion.
Yeah.
And that is what I call the judicial toilet flush.
Yeah.
Judges have the most dirty tricks, and these are the honorable, ethical ones.
Mm-hmm.
How do judges kill a case? They don't. They start it. They put it out in there. So, how do lawyers kill a case? They forum shop. So where have you been? Texas, New York?
We started in Louisiana, then it was moved to New York, and then to DC.
Wow, what a shock. They want to get out of Louisiana.
Yeah, very, very interesting, right?
And so then you go to and New York ain't no party.
Yeah, I know.
And then you end up in DC. So now, what does your lawyer want to do? Maybe.
Well, I don't want to get into that on national.
Right. Well, I did not mean that specifically.
Yeah.
I meant that generally. What does a lawyer want to do? Not piss off.
Right now, it seems like everybody's just like waiting. So
you can write a lawyer. You can write a letter to the attorney. I had a case in Cobb County, Georgia, where I got hosed by a law firm so badly, they literally went up and stabbed me in the back. And anyway, long story short, the bottom line is the judge had a hearing. He said he'd rule in 60 days. He disappeared for a year. He never responded. The opposing counsel wrote a letter to please rule if possible. He was up for election. He lost the election. The replacement person comes in from the other party. The Democrats purged Cobb County. That's a whole other story. They go into his office. I find out 2 years later, find a mess. There's all these cases he hadn't ruled on stacked up. No one babysits these people. And they violate, and there's no account. The key is what's going to happen to them? 0, 0, and 0.
Yeah.
And then the chief judge gets it, and he's out here at 40,000 feet. And what's his agenda? Oh, I got to clean up the docket. Oh, no. Dismiss, 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 dismiss. Okay. Now you're sitting here as a normal American, not a Perkins Coie funded by Soros machine of evil. And you don't have a ton of money. You've spent 30, 40 grand maybe. Your lawyer ain't working for free.
Yeah.
Your lawyers are just feeding off the fight. Parasites on the poop. They're just like, oh, more trauma, more drama, more money for me. Yippee-yi-yay. Okay. You want to fight this? More money for me. And then you get to fight it up to the appellate court. Does the appellate court want to take on judges? Because they have discretion. Does the appellate court want to admit they have a judicial problem? No. Mm-hmm. Does the public have experience in courts to understand this goes on all the time? No. What does the media do? There's an article right now. I saw it on the plane coming up. I'm in Michigan right now, and there's an article on the plane. I didn't read it. I just saw the headlines. So I have to read it. But it was about, SCOTUS is concerned about, or Gorsuch maybe, and Amy Coney concerned about constant criticism of the judiciary by Trump. I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, that sanctimonious bubble has got to be popped, and we don't throw the baby. It's lack of accountability, sanctimony, lack of professionalism, sitting on your docket. I mean, it's crazy. And
so what do you think about, sorry to interrupt, but
that's right.
This whole concept that a district court can basically run the foreign policy of the United States by stopping the president whenever they want.
This is absolutely not new. This happened the first time the Trump administration. This has happened before. And again, the power grid loves this stuff, right? I mean, you know, this is a tool. If you're a senator, especially now a Democratic senator, or you're Mitch McConnell, Mitch McConnell got a lot of people that hated his guts because he was a master of the rules, and he knew how to use the rules to tip the entire cart over. And this rule right now that these district courts can pull this never comes into the media's attention, the public's attention, when there's a Democrat in the White House. It just doesn't happen, because that's how they get to control what they want, and that's how they get to suppress the big evil Republicans. And as long as we have this stupid narrative that's a holdover from the middle 20th century, that Republicans bad, Democrats good, you know, it's so old, and it should be gone so long ago. Only idiots really still think this, and
that paradigm doesn't exist anymore.
But there are still tons of useful idiots that see this. So right now, that's what's happening. My point is, they've had more than one opportunity to get rid of this. This should have been adjudicated all the way to the Supreme Court and gotten a ruling. It didn't. It needs to happen to now. And it's the long slog up Justice Mountain. And here's what's going to happen, right? You go up there, and then you're going to have the media industrial complex screaming, Republicans and conservatives don't want to have judges making decisions. They're preventing people from speaking. I'm like, look, this bozo in Washington State should not be able to trip up the entire country. That's what the Supreme Court is for. But here's the thing the public doesn't understand, that they're allowed. This is one of the biggest misconceptions, that they are allowed that the judiciary allows to continue. The Supreme Court role is not to correct lower court error. It is not. And you know who told me this was in Park City, Utah. I took a separation of powers class from Scalia. And Scalia told me this. He was really agitated with me because I said the judiciary needs to do a better job of educating the American public of what the role of the Supreme Court really is. And he's like, oh, sure. He's like, you know, he was so hilarious and pithy and funny and brilliant and could cut you down in 3 seconds. And he said the Supreme Court's role has not been to correct lower court error in 100 years. It's been to correct conflicts between the courts.
It's news from the edge. It's Output with John Ritchie and L Todd Wood.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet, and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor, and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online fast and save $45. Your kit with prescriptions to treat common and life-saving illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit twc.health/CDM, promo code CDM. That's twc.health/CDM, promo code CDM.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Welcome back to Output. Monday, we're going to have a big show. We're going to have Ed Dowd on. Rob Cunningham's going to be co-hosting with me that hour, that show. And we're going to dig into what's really going on economically, because we think we have some serious problems heading our way in the U.S. economy, probably short term for a couple years, but it's going to be rough. So how do you position yourself? What do you need to know? What leading indicators do you need to watch, et cetera? So check us out Monday on Output with Ed Dowd, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday Eastern. And we're going to continue to bring you the best stories. I wanted to just highlight something real quick. If you go to the Manhattan.press, which is our New York paper, I'm just going to go there now myself and click on the top right, the Manhattan bestsellers. We have a real bestseller list. And you can go through and see editors' picks, young adult, children's, adult fiction, adult nonfiction, politics, history, just simply the best sellers. And you can buy the books from us there too. You can just click on the link and it'll take you to the CDM bookshop, and you can buy the books. Why would you buy them from Amazon when you can buy from us and support free media? But more importantly, you can get a non-biased book list. I mean, there's liberal books on there, communist books on there. It's just the best books that are selling every week. It's a couple weeks for the data to get there. So it's usually a couple weeks behind today's date, but it's the real deal. It's really competing against the New York Times and getting a lot of good publicity. So check out the Manhattan.press and the Manhattan bestsellers list. With that, what a packed show. We're going to be packed again Monday. This show's getting a lot of attention. Appreciate all the audience. Appreciate all the new listeners. Tell your friends. We are the morning intelligence brief you can't miss. And we'll see you Monday at 10 a.m. on Output.